Good afternoon, nutmeggers. And it is afternoon. My name is Selena Rifkin, and this is Make Connecticut Healthy Again. Starting a little bit about me, I have a master's in nutrition and over 25 years of experience in finding and eating real, non-processed food. But even though I have a degree and wrote a thesis, I don't expect you to just take my word for anything. I'll always put sources in the show notes, and I really do urge you to do your own research. Welcome back to Don't Eat That Crap. The last time we defined junk food, which would be something you consume, I won't call it food, that adds toxins to your body and no building materials. It's a snack that takes up energy and resources to digest and doesn't supply enough in return. That puts you in deficit. So today, we're going to talk about why eating junk food makes you feel tired, foggy, and cranky, even if that first bite feels like bliss. We're going to talk about grains and refined sugar today. Both of those things are going to have a strong negative effect on your blood sugar. I've only ever met one person in my entire 61 years who didn't like sweets, and that was my aunt. She was the family weirdo who would make dessert but never ever ate it. The rest of us, not so much. We're programmed by this for evolution. And I don't know how she got off, but she was always very slender and she's still with us and very clear of thought. So, how much sugar does the average American eat? I wrote my thesis well over 10 years ago, and at that point, it was 60 to 70 pounds a year. And some estimates were even higher, up to 120 pounds, if one included all types of sugar, because there are multiple different types of sugar. There's fructose, there's the stuff in your blood, which is glucose, there's sucrose, and then there's a few others. There's lactose, that's milk sugar. So there's a lot of different types of sugar. So if you're including all of those, at that point, it was 120 pounds. In the 1800s, people were eating less than 10 pounds of sugar a year. That's a big difference. Daily now, it can be 17 teaspoons of sugar or more, and that is double or triple recommendations. Although I don't really trust the recommendations either, let's be honest. So let's talk about how sugar's made. And this also applies to wheats and any kind of grains. So processing is what they do in when it's pulled out, and is a that is taking away all of the fiber. It sucks out all the minerals and the vitamins that are there naturally. And they do this so that it's a pretty product, so that your sugar is white, so that your flour is white. And also, when they leave in some of these elements, it will allow wheat flour in particular to go rancid because there are still oils in it. White flour, you can keep that forever. I don't necessarily recommend it as a survival food because, again, it's going to take away more than it gives back. So, for those of you who are actually into setting aside food in the event of emergency, find something other than white flour if you possibly can, because effectively you're choosing to poison yourself. What is left behind once they strip all that out is empty calories that use up more nutrients than it takes to process it in your body. I'm going to give you an example. Imagine you're stranded on a desert island and you've been washed up there with a crate of sugar. If you eat that sugar, you will die faster than if you ate nothing. That's because you're burning through reserves faster than you're replacing them. Sugar doesn't actually give your body any nutrients. Your body can completely live without sugar. And wheat Wheat turns into sugar in your blood. Wheat will turn itself, any kind of carbohydrate, and that's any carbohydrate, turns itself into glucose in your blood. So why are we suckers for this? Um, it's because our brains are kind of greedy. And I wouldn't even use the word greedy because thinking, which is what humans are like, that's what brought us to the top of the food chain on this planet. Thinking takes a lot of fuel. We imagine things And that means that we get to save our physical energy elsewhere. And it allows us to change our environment. But again, it takes a lot of fuel. Our brains prefer burning ketones, but carbohydrates, that's a really quick blast of energy. Carbohydrate metabolism is a little shortcut, and we get a little zing of dopamine when we eat carbs. That isn't a problem when these foods are rare. And through most of our evolution, we only got the fruits and honey during the summer, and we weren't eating grain until the Neolithic. Most of our evolution occurred during the Paleolithic and before. The fruit that we ate then was tiny and it had way less sugar in it. And those fruits came with vitamins. They weren't just fructose, which is fruit sugar. They had some vitamins and they had polyphenols in them. Polyphenols are chemical elements that can act in all sorts of beneficial ways on the body. Some of them are negative, but apples were pretty safe. They were little then, little tiny apples, like about this big. Modern sugar is not anything like that. And leaving aside for a moment the problem of carbohydrate metabolism, sugar and flour are all stripped of their nutrients before they're rolled into that cookie that's packaged so nicely. Modern junk food exploits our energy and shortcut systems perfectly. Cravings are driven by dopamine, and that overrides everything. Once those pathways get hacked, our inflammation rises because sugar always causes inflammation. And if you have any kind of chronic pain, the first thing to do is stop eating sugar and cut your carbs way down. There's numerous stories from people who have started doing the keto diet who have stopped all joint inflammation. And yes, these are anecdotal because why would any pharmaceutical company fund a study for something they're not going to make any money on? But I spent a bunch of time in a keto group, and that was the biggest thing that people commented on. I also saw this among people who were just changing their diet to something that was just natural foods. There's a lot of health changes that happen when you do that, but we're going to get to that in a different post. The other thing that sugar does is it drops your immunity. That has actually been demonstrated in studies. About 20 minutes to half an hour after your blood sugar, after you eat sugar, your immunity goes boom. So that makes you more susceptible to whatever's coming down the road. I personally know about mood tanking and energy crashing. And when we feel bad, we really, really, really want something to make us feel better, and that makes a vicious cycle. You crave more junk food because real food doesn't give us that rush of unrefined carbs, and it feels kind of meh. Our ancestors didn't have this particular problem until we started eating grains. And yeah, grains have the same effect as sugar because all carbs turn to sugar in your blood. I said that before, but it's worth saying again. And even whole grains and less refined sugar do this. It's not a matter of saying, oh, I'll just buy whole wheat flour or brown sugar. No, it doesn't work that way. These things too will also turn into glucose in your blood and affect your blood sugar. They might do it a tiny bit slower, but that isn't necessarily the case. So I'm going to give you another personal story. For about 50 years, my blood sugar was a nightmare roller coaster, and I do mean 50 years. If I skipped a meal, I was nauseous, dizzy, shaky, fasting. I had friends who fasted. Oh, you should do fasting. It's great. You feel wonderful. I was like, are you out of your mind? I will vomit. And I did. If my blood sugar gets crazy, if my blood sugar gets out of control, I want to vomit. I literally start gagging. So fasting, like that seemed impossible. How could anyone possibly do that? So I read a lot about why fasting mattered and decided to try it and didn't do it slow enough. And yep, that was bad. So I had to stop. The key to getting out of sugar is to do it slowly. You can do it hardcore, and I'm going to talk about that in the post after the next one. But anyway, so I slowly shifted to keto, slowly. And keto is a diet that has a high level of healthy fats. That's its own subject. I'll get to that in the future. And you consume 30 grams or less of carbs a day. Took a little time, but I lost 15 pounds and stabilized my energy completely. Dr. William Fung has used this diet to correct type 2 diabetes, and he's done this for over a decade. And he did it in on patients that didn't have the money for diabetes medications of any kind, let alone insulin. This was in Canada. And he did this in a population that had no resources. So if he can do it in a population of people that don't have anything, then you too should be able to do this if this is something you're struggling with. I started keto diet because my resting blood sugar started creeping up. And that's pretty common as we get older. That happens it's just a function of aging. And it's not unusual, but we don't have to make it worse. You don't have to be overweight and have high sugar. And being diabetic carries a much higher cost than was willing to pay, especially when there's something I could do to fix it. It's really frustrating to me. I have a friend who she was very overweight, she was obese, and because her parents were both obese, she thought that this was her genetic heritage. It wasn't. It had everything to do with what she was eating. I'd had dinner at their house. I know what was in their cupboards, and it was mostly packaged food. And undoubtedly, this is what she grew up eating. So it is possible to fix this, and it makes my heart hurt when I see that people don't think it's possible to fix it. So anyway, now, because I did the keto thing, I can miss meals, and I'm just hungry. I'm not sick, I'm not dizzy, I'm not queasy, I'm just hungry. Sometimes I'm not even hungry, depending on what I'm doing. I typically do intermittent fasting by not eating breakfast. I've even done 72-hour fast. I don't like it, but it's doable. And once I was at my goal weight, I eased off the keto and I pretty much eat low carb now. Mostly. I'm not perfect and I'm not going to pretend that I am because that would be a lie. When I'm stressed, I don't eat well and I feel it. I start to put on weight in about a day. And then I start to struggle with a little emotional instability. Yay. So sorry, my husband. He has to put up with me. So then I have to take a step back and take the time to do some real meal planning and prep some food that will keep me healthy and I can keep doing what matters. Because doing what matters is what gives life meaning. When someone says thank you for doing what you do, that's a much better dopamine hit than junk food is. So to finish up, remember, junk food doesn't just fail to nourish, it actually drains you. Next week, I'm going to post something about the additives that are in junk food and why that makes it even worse, and why the FDA declaring something safe isn't really safe. So stick around for episode 3 next week, and we're going to get into the chemicals. So start a healthy habit, start walking daily, get outside, get rid of something bad for you. You are needed. Your family needs you. Your community needs you. Let's make Connecticut healthy again, and I'll see you soon. Bye-bye.